Hey, super awesome listeners, it's Matt. Jen is on summer break getting ready season 5 of What Are You Listening To? So while she's resting and preparing all at the same time, we've got some of the best of her episodes as well as some of the other shows on the Super Awesome Mix podcast network. This week, it's an episode from May of this year on the Super Awesome Mix show, where I led an intro mix to the Beastie Boys. Sammer was certainly familiar with them, but we went deep on their history and discography. Enjoy. Did you know Super Awesome Mix has an app? Go to the Apple App Store today and download Super Awesome Mix. It's free. You could start creating and sending your own digital mixtapes in just a few clicks. Also, there's links to our Instagram account and a link where you can follow your favorite podcast. Speaking of which, welcome back to another Super Awesome Mix. My name is Matt Sidholm, alongside my co-host and co-founder of Super Awesome Mix, Sammer Abu Sabi. Sammer, how are we doing this week?
Doing real well. Pretty excited for this mix. This was a really fun one to listen to. I'm happy that, to be honest, I had forgotten that we were going to do this. So when you sent me the mix, I was like, oh, right. We talked about this one. This is great.
Yeah, so as longtime listeners know, every now and then we like to just dedicate an episode to a probably well-known band or singer that you may or may not be all that familiar with, but you probably know the name. And so this round, I am introducing you, the fans, and Sammer to Beastie Boys.
Yeah, so to be clear, I know the Beastie Boys. I just want to distill any kind of like, oh my god, because after the whole Fat Boy Slim thing of not knowing the video,
yeah,
I feel like, we got a lot of comments, we got a lot of DMs on that. So
like, how could you not?
I wasn't
know this?
Completely in the dark.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Well, I think it was more appropriate as I looked at it, and I was like, yeah, why am I doing an intro to Beastie Boys? Well, similar to like Pearl Jam. It's like Pearl Jam came on when I was like starting high school, and now they just came out with a new album, well out of high school. So it's like I've kind of seen their whole career, and kind of the same thing with Beastie Boys. Like I was in grade school when their, License to Ill album came out, and they kind of came to everybody's consciousness. And then their last album was in 2011. And so saw their entire career. And I remember it vividly. So we thought it might be more appropriate for me to take this one instead of Sammer.
Yes, I'm glad you did, because there were a number of songs here that I had never heard, but obviously some that I not only heard, but absolutely loved growing up. So let's get into it. We're going to kick off this mix with your first pick. And just as a reminder, I'll be introducing every song since this was Matt's mix. So you went with Fight for Your Right.
Okay, so this is just a great intro song. So if you're making a mix, like this is a great one. It has a great, guitar riff to start off, a lot of energy. And this is, one of their most well-known songs, if not their most well-known song. Again, Beastie Boys, 3 guys: Adam Horowitz, aka Ad Rock, Adam Yauch, aka MCA, and Mike Diamond, aka Mike D. So these 3 guys, they come on. I mean, I think they're like teenagers when this album comes out.
Right.
And, everybody knows this one. It's become such an anthem over the years. And if you think it, like, to put it in context, this is like 1986, I think, when this album comes out. And, there's guitars and there's rapping and there's yelling and like, it doesn't have a genre. Like, I mean, I remember listening to it.
Right.
And it's like, well, what is this? And they were kind of in a rap category, but actually their first big break, they were on tour with Madonna. So like, how does that even make sense? Right. So it's like, they're just sort of this, they have this very, just from the jump, they're just this unique band where it's like, we're going to put out this song and you guys figure it out, right? Like, it's not really going to fit into any particular box, but this one, Fight for Your Right to Party. I mean, even, Travis Kelce a couple years ago when the Chiefs won one of their Super Bowls is screaming this on the podium after they win it. So it has certainly lasted the test of time. I think it's safe to say everybody knows this song. So I had to kind of put it first on this intro mix.
Yeah, no, it's a great I have several thoughts on this one. A, I agree with you. It's a great mix opener to like kick something off, like great party anthem. B, on that note, what's really funny is apparently they had written this as like a sarcastic like jab at party anthems. Like they were making fun of them. And then of course it was just adopted as an actual party anthem. So it's like people completely missed the point and made it just made it literally what it was trying to make fun of. And they did a great job, even if they're trying to make fun of it. I mean, it's awesome. It's a great party anthem. It reminds me of, and we've talked about this. This might need to be a mix of its own one day, but like songs that basically people just turned into their own story, completely ignoring the artist's story. So it's like Green Day's "Time for Your Life," Smashing Pumpkins "Today." Like both of those were also written for completely different reasons than how they were consumed by the public. So this could be in there for sure. But
Yeah, and you introduce a great point there that like the Beastie Boys are all they're very like tongue in cheek, and so
right.
however the public interpreted a lot of their songs, so many of them were kind of satire or they're just messing around, and people just sort of took their songs and kind of ran with it, even though sometimes the lyrics make no sense at all, and it's just kind of a fun song.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and we'll get to like another song in here where like there's some potentially problematic lyrics, and they literally were like, "Guys, this like we're just joking." It's like a parody song. It's relax. Anyway, so great opening track, and definitely one that I was familiar with. I mean, this goes up there, I think, with like Queen. "We Will Rock You," right? Like I just feel like those two could sit on a same mix together of just like pump up a crowd, amp people up. It's great. All right, track number 2, you went with Paul Revere.
Okay, still on the License to Ill album. This one I included because when you think of Beastie Boys and you're like, oh, they're a rap group, right? And then you hear this, and this is much more straightforward 80s rap, and it's a good introduction to kind of their style where they're each going to kind of take a turn. So in most of these songs, you're going to hear all three voices, and each of them's going to have kind of a chance to step to the mic, and they're just kind of telling a really silly story. And I think it's also a cool starting point to show how they're going to rhyme things and how they're going to put together couplets. But it's also a good starting point because I think, as you'll see over the course of this mix, they get a lot better at this. And so you could see a little bit of the immaturity of this writing, especially when you compare it to some of the songs later on this mix and some of their later albums. But this is still just a fun song, right? Like you still want to listen to this and you could still get into this, even though I think this isn't like just pure musically and lyrically one of their best songs.
I love that analysis. I completely agree. Like I think what's really genius about the Beastie Boys, and like you said, this kind of shows the building blocks of it, is they take a really basic backbeat, right? Which apparently this is like an 808 drum played backwards. And there was some like debate on whether or not it was like an accident that they played it backwards and they just ran with it, or like they purposefully wanted to flip the sound. But super basic beat, and then they just like rhyme on top of it, and often it doesn't even make any sense, nor should you try to make it make sense, right? Like this story to me, like I can't follow what's happening. It's like loosely a story about like, I think a horse named Paul Revere and some dude. Anyway, it's nothing to do with Paul Revere, the American who notified everyone that the British were coming. Anyway, but their voices are just so good together. Like I wrote here, like they could narrate anything, right? Like I think that was their genius, is like they could you could put in front of them like directions for a prescription drug, and they'd find a way for them to just like each take a turn reading it, and you're like, this song rocks. Like
here's all the potential side effects
right.
as sung by Beastie Boys. Yes.
I would pay more attention to those commercials if they were narrated by the Beastie Boys. But yeah, it's so good. So I'm happy.
Well, and what I love about this too, you talk about how well their voices go together. It's, like a good comedian will make it sound like this is the first time he or she is thinking of this idea. Like these guys sound like this is the first time this sounds like a first take, right? Like, oh, you make up a rhyme. Okay, now you make up a rhyme. Like they clearly sat down and wrote the song, right?
Exactly. That's awesome. All right, track number 3. This is one that I loved. I listened to this a lot growing up. This is Girls.
Yeah, so again, just sort of in the same vein as Fight for Your Right, where it's like, what genre is this? It's like they're kind of doing some background vocals, like kind of doo-woppy. There's just this very sort of light, like xylophone beat sort of going along here. And, the lyrics are, I guess, supposed to be sort of an homage to girls. They talk about how much they like girls, but there's a hint of sexism throughout it.
Right.
You got to remember the time here, mid 80s. But I think it's also, again, they're just sort of having fun. I don't, it's almost like when they threaten violence in their songs, no one's actually like in fear. Right?
Right.
It's the same thing here. It's like they make these comments. It's like, does anyone actually think that they think this way about girls? It's just a song. And so I love this one. I love the sound of this one, and I love how unique it sounds. And it's just a fun song. And you're going to hear me say fun
I
a lot
agree.
because I do think these guys are just a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I like this one is very playful to me, and very silly. Like you can kind of literally hear them like laugh in this, as they're singing
Yes.
this, right? Like
Yeah.
they just sound like they're having a lot of fun and joking around. This is one of the ones I mentioned earlier where it's like people kind of give them flack for like the line of like girls to do the dishes, like kind of putting them in a stereotypical position. But it's like literally it's like a parody song. Like you get the
It
sense it's a
is.
parody song.
Yes.
And also like I don't think it's that insane to think that like a bunch of like rowdy teenagers, right, like they're still pretty young, are gonna like have this stupid picture of like, oh, like that's why I want a girl. It's like, come on, like you grow out of that ideally, right? But I think
Well, and
like
in some of their lyrics later, they actually like specifically reference like disrespecting
right,
women, right? And so it's like it is something where it's like, yeah, they're teenage boys. Of
right.
course, they're gonna have dumb thoughts about women,
Exactly.
like And I'm
Exactly.
not saying it's like right, but it's like we could probably lower our expectations of teenage boys, right?
Exactly. Yeah, teenage boys in a group called Beastie Boys, where again, like they just sang a song about a horse named Paul Revere. Like everyone,
Right.
it's okay.
So those things where their history teacher got really excited, like, oh, they wrote about Paul. I knew I'd get through to those boys. And it's like, there's not one historical fact in this song.
No, I was really disappointed. I wanted to learn more too, but this song did not deliver in that regard. No delivery. Okay. All right. I would also be remiss to not do my usual shout out to the faithful recreating of all the bum 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 in the lyrics. So it's really good. All right, track 4. You went with "Hey Ladies."
Okay, so now we're on to their second album, Paul's Boutique, which I think is underrated. Like, I think this is a better album than License to Ill, and I feel like I've heard License to Ill a million times. And it's got more of the pop songs on it, probably. License to Ill does. I mean, I didn't even mention Brass Monkey, and that still gets a lot of radio play. But I think Paul's Boutique is a much stronger album. And so you start with something like this, Hey Ladies, which that now they're going to get more into beats and samples and putting these things together. And that's where I think they kind of go to a whole new level with that starting in this album, but also in some of their lyrics. Like in this one, one of the lyrics I'll call out here, I've got more hits than Sadahuru O.
Yes.
Do you know who that is, Sammer?
I looked it up. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
the quote Babe Ruth of Japan, right?
that's
Is
right. He
what I
hit
read.
nearly 900 home runs in his career in Japanese baseball. Now, they're making this reference, and it's 1989. Like, there's no internet that someone could go read. So it's like, how did they know that? How am I supposed to know that? Like, just some of the stuff they reference in these songs, I just think it's remarkable when you kind of put it in context, and that there is no regard for like, are people going to get that? Like, that's a really cool lyric when you can look it up on Wikipedia, right? But in 1989, it's like, who is this guy? Well, what are they
Right.
talking about? And where do I even find information on him? Yeah.
One funny thing I have to note here, because I'm pretty sure this comment was written by an American. They had to qualify that typically Japanese baseball stadiums are smaller than American ones, which is why maybe he hit so many home runs. And I'm like, come on, guys, give someone a win somewhere, right? Like,
Nope. Nope. Barry Bonds is still the king. Okay. If you acknowledge that record, otherwise it's Hank Aaron. Okay.
that's awesome. Um, but no, you're right. Like the referencing, the sampling, it's like out of control. It's so good. And again, like I just think their songs are relatively like kind of simple. You know, they sound simple, but then they're like so fun and vocally they're so fun to listen to. I also think, you know, they start really like their lyrics start to improve, right? Like I love the line, break up with your girl, it ended in tears. Vincent Van Gogh, go and mail that ear. I mean, just hilarious kind of stuff, right? Like it's great. Again, like these are youthful dudes just like putting together rhymes, whatever they can do to kind of make you laugh. So I love it. They're a lot of fun. All right. Track number 5, you went with Shadrach.
Okay, Samurai, I gotta ask right off the top. Do you know, or maybe you looked it up, but are you familiar with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego?
No, I wasn't really.
Okay, so here's Catholic school Matt, okay, listening to the Beastie Boys, and then you hear Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These guys are three prophets from the book of Daniel in the Old Testament.
Okay.
And how in the world would a rapper ever include these three names in a rap song?
That's an excellent question.
And similar to Paul Revere, there is no reference to the story of these three people.
Right.
So unless you're familiar with the Bible, the Old Testament, and like these names would stick out, like you would not, I mean, you have no context to this. And it's just three names. And I wonder how many people just kind of wondered, like, what are they saying? Right? Like, what are they talking about there? Who are these people? Anyway, they're from the book of Daniel. They were thrown into the flames for worshiping God, and they survived. And so
Okay.
then everybody started worshiping their God. I don't know if that's what they were going for, although I read some critics online who were saying that was the like deeper meaning of this song. I don't think it is. I think they were just challenging themselves to get it into a song.
Right. I think so too. I would put money on that.
But they continue with just like, I mean, I love this song. I go back to the song over and over again. So many great rhymes. One lyric I'll call out because I've got more stories than JD's got Salinger. I hold the title and you are the challenger. Again, doesn't
So
make
good.
sense, but a great
Yeah.
JD Salinger reference.
Yeah, like working him into a rap.
Right.
Amazing. Especially because like he's known for writing one of his books is like JD Salinger's 9 stories, right? So like to say here that like they've got one more, like they've done 10 stories. Like, it's great. It's a great little, you know, literary dig at someone. I love it. Um this is actually one that I wasn't familiar with, so I was really happy to hear this one. It reminds me almost as like an early girl talk because of the number of samples that they run through in this song,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like they kind of laid the groundwork for like what would come later, you know, with like hyper sampling and just like that style, that genre of music where you just kind of roll through like 50 songs in a single song. So I loved it for that. But again, yeah, great lyrics. That was literally the line that I was going to read out. So I'm glad that you shared it already. All right, track number 6, halfway point. You went with "Shake Your Rump."
Okay, last song off of Paul's Boutique. Again, kind of a party song here. The thing that I love about this band is that you could see a band actually playing these songs. So they go from heavy sampling, you know, in a song like Shadrach to Shake Your Rump, where, yeah, there's some samples, but it's also just like a lot of drum beats where you could
Hmm.
have like some drummers up there recreating this, which is pretty cool. And they have a few songs that are really guitar heavy too, to where just a kind of standard band could probably recreate the sound here. You don't necessarily need all the samples, but that's what's really cool about their sound just in general is the way they can kind of switch between those two styles, if you will. Again, a lot of fun lyrics here. I'm like Sam the Butcher bringing Alice the meat. That's a great Brady Bunch reference for those who aren't familiar
Yeah.
with the Brady Bunch. Um, but yeah, I mean, just it's really good. I mean, and again, just a great like party song. I mean, some of their early stuff, I'd say their early stuff more so than later, is just continually stuff that you could put on a mixtape at a party and no one would even like skip a beat.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. This is one that I again was not very familiar with. I guess I didn't know this album as much as the other ones, but really loved it. And again, it's like to your point of earlier, like what genre are they? Like this one is like a funk track, right? Like they kind of they include a lot of like samples from funk songs, and then they just kind of roll with it, and it works. It works really well. I love it. All right, track number 7 you went with So What You Want.
All right, so this is from their third album, Check Your Head, and this was the lead single. And again, they're kind of on the forefront of sort of this different sounding music, because here they start doing the vocal distortion stuff with their microphones, right? So, and you've got this cool beat behind it, and it's like, so even without the lyrics, even though you were kind of like, what are they saying at first? I remember when this song came out, it was still like cool to hear. You weren't so thrown
Yeah.
off by the vocals not being 100% clear. It's like you still kind of rolled with it. But again, this was the first time I think sort of on the radio you were hearing stuff like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like there's a number of songs, this one is one of them where even having read the lyrics now, and I read them multiple times, I have no idea what they're really singing about, and I don't care, right? Like I literally don't care because the song is so good, like musically. And like I'm not saying that their lyrics take away from it. Like it all works together and it just doesn't matter to me what they're singing about. Again, like to my point earlier, they can narrate just about anything and I'm gonna be on board with it. So but yeah, like love the bass and guitar beat behind their lyrics. Like you can just crank this song and enjoy it. So I think they're great at that. All right, track number 8, you went with Pass the Mic.
Okay, so this one maybe not as well known off Check Your Head, but the reason I wanted to include this is because this is probably the first time I remember hearing them and thinking you can completely drop the lyrics off this one and just make this an instrumental, and it kind of stands on its own.
Yeah.
And they kind of started to do more of that later in their career. Like they would include it on albums, just some instrumentals, and then actually ended up putting out a whole album like that later. But this was the first time where it's like the lyrics are great, they're fun, that they complement the music. But also I think the music and the sampling and the mix are so strong here that even without the lyrics, like I want to listen to this.
I agree. I wrote that this could easily be put on like my confidence like strutting mix, like kind of the walking tall energy. This definitely has that. Like I think you, to your point, you really could strip away the lyrics. But then in this case the lyrics do really help. Like I love the line in verse 5 where they sing, a lot of people get jealous, they're talking about me, but that's just because they haven't got a thing to say. And I think that's really cool, right? Like I think oftentimes people that tear you down are because they themselves like don't necessarily like, they're almost jealous of the fact that you're doing something they want to be doing and they don't know how to do it yet. So like their instinct, or like our instinct as people, is to like just tear that down. Like you don't understand it, you tear it down. And so it's like they sum all of that up in these two great lines, on top of like a really good track that just makes you feel confident and want to like believe in yourself. So I love this track. This was one that I wasn't super familiar with, but I'm very happy to have been introduced to it because I like it a lot. With that, let's move on to, I think going forward, I know every single one of these and love all of them. So this was a great way to round out the mix. We're going to kick it off, track 9, with Sabotage.
Yeah, probably their second most well-known song on after Fight for Your Right, and they're kind of in the same genre of just like heavy guitar riffs and just like kind of genreless, like a lot of screaming here. I mean, again, it's sort of a rap song. This album is Ill Communication, came out I think in 1994. But yeah, like they have a great music video here directed by Spike Jones. It was kind of this, looked low budget, but they clearly put some thought into it, kind of recreating sort of a 70s cop show vibe. And so that's worth checking out.
Right.
But this one, I mean, people probably know this one. They've probably heard it. You could sing along to this one. Yeah, I mean, what else can you say about it? But really kind of whereas they never really went away, this one was a monster hit for them versus kind of Paul's Boutique and Check Your Head in between License to Ill and Ill Communication.
Yeah, and I think I could understand why, right? Like even the first like 5 seconds of the song immediately kind of pull you in. It has this like really strong FU energy to it, right? Like it's it's they're screaming like you're trying to sabotage, like and you can just kind of, it'd be a great like workout track, right? Like a great workout mix, weightlifting mix. Before a game mix, like it could go on any of those types of mixtapes because like it just has that energy of like, yeah, like I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna rock this thing. So this is like a top 3 for me for Beastie Boys. I absolutely love this song and it's regularly featured on one of my like whenever I put together like wake up playlists where I just want to like really start the day with high energy, like
Yeah,
this is
this one
on
will
there.
wake you up for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of Sure, track number 10, we've got Sure Shot.
All right. Sure Shot was actually the opening track on the Ill Communication album. And I think it's just lyrically, this one is like really strong. And I just love the energy and the flow throughout this one really kind of stands out for me. And also, I got to call out, they mention, I've got more action than my man John Woo, and I've got more hits like I was Rod Carew. So now, again, another baseball reference. I mean, clearly showing where their fandom lies.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, again, just referencing all sorts of things in, I don't know, straight ahead pop culture, probably not, because I don't know how popular Rod Carew was, but Adam Sandler references him later in the Hanukkah song as well.
No, this is awesome. We mentioned earlier that they kind of like loop back to some of their earlier lyrics, and so like this is kind of a good like fix for the song Girls, because they message here, or they write here in this song, I want to say a little something that's long overdue. The disrespect to women has got to be through. To all the mothers and the sisters and wives and friends, I want to offer my love and respect to the end. Which is that's a really nice message. We got Mother's Day coming up here soon. It's like, that's lovely.
That's true. And look, and that stopped all disrespect of women in the mid 90s, right?
Yeah, it did. They solved it.
So
they
like,
solved
we don't really have that problem anymore.
No, music has been solving problems for a long time. It's clear it's a really effective way to handle societal
All right,
issues.
we kid, but you're right. It is that it does show the evolution of their lyrics, like we talked about earlier. It's like they're teenagers; they're going to sing one way. Now they're adults, and they've clearly made a shift there. Yeah.
Right. The other thing that I loved about the song is just that flute sample that I think it was done by Jeremy Steig, and it like that makes the song, right? Like this is one of those cases where like the sample really makes that song, because it works so well underneath what they're singing about. So great track, great sample. All right, track number 11. This was literally the song that introduced me to Beastie Boys. This is their first track I'd ever heard from them. And it was in computer lab in 7th grade. Someone was playing it on their computer. And it was like a fly to honey. I was like, what is that? I have to know more. Like, I loved it. And so this is Intergalactic.
Yeah, Intergalactic off the album Hello Nasty, which just celebrated its 25th anniversary. So this was 1999, I think, when this came out. Yeah, this was a really big hit for them. I mean, I think in ads for The Marvels, the movie that came out last year, I think they were still using this song. So, I mean, it's still out there in popular culture, whether people like remember it as the Beastie Boys or not. But you're right. Again, just another real unique sound where it's just like, what are they saying? Like, there's a robot talking. They're from outer space,
Right.
and then again, it's less. And it's interesting what they do with their voices, how they're able to kind of go up an octave, but they're kind of yelling, and it's. I mean, it's hard to describe, but they're also able to do something a little bit more straightforward, like in Sure Shot, on Ill Communication. But yeah, this is kind of a different sound for them, but again, kind of on the forefront of using sort of electronics and kind of, distorting sounds and voices throughout. But yeah, this and this whole album's really strong.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just remembered that this would be one of my songs that, because I've mentioned before, longtime listeners, you've heard me say this, that I had like giant subwoofers in my car in high school.
Yes.
I was that kid. This is one of those songs where I would like test them, right? Because it's a great deep bass line. Like this will blow out speakers if you play it loud enough. So this was like an all-time favorite of mine to like, all right, let's put on Intergalactic and see what happens. Make sure that everything's working as expected. If the mirrors are shaking, I've done my job. Like the amps are good.
So irresponsible. God, Sammer.
I know. I was a brat. All right. Let's bring this home. Track 12, another classic of theirs. This is Check It Out.
Yeah, this was from To the Five Boroughs, which came out in 2004. Again, at this point, they're so good at kind of the beats and samples and production behind the lyrics that, I mean, you can listen to this without the lyrics, but I think the lyrics here, I mean, I love the way they rap over this song and the way they combine. So again, almost 20 years on in their career. And at this point, this would be their sixth album. Still able to do that and just flow so well together. So, I mean, it's great. I'm going to call out one lyric here. I bring the shit that's beyond bizarre, like Miss Piggy. Who? Moi? I just love how they reference Miss Piggy, right? But also kind of
Yes.
acknowledge that they were a little bizarre. They were a little out there.
No, I agree. I have loved the line. This one like lives rent free in my head. I'm going to clean it up a little bit. I'm a mother effing Nick at night with classics rerunning that you know all right, which is a great reference to. I think Nick at Night still exists. I think now they're showing shows from like the 90s and
They
early
are, yeah.
2000s.
It used to be like Father Knows Best. Now it's like Friends.
Right.
And it's like, oh wow. I guess we are getting old.
All right. Yeah, it's no longer like Dick Van Dyke and I Love Lucy.
That's right. Crazy. That's right.
But yeah, I love that line. But yes, chorus is so catchy. This song also gives me kind of like Fatboy Slim vibes to it, right? Like, which he was also like really big around that time. Late 90s, early 2000s. So a lot of fun, great track, amazing mix overall. I think you nailed it. This is awesome.
Yeah, so let me just put a button on this. They had 2 albums come out after To the Five Boroughs. So they had the mix-up in 2007, which was entirely instrumentals. So we talked about how they included a little bit of that on some of these albums, and they just did a whole album in 2007 that was just sort of beats and samples. And then in 2011, they came out with the Hot Sauce Committee Part 2. Now, they were trying to make a double album about that time, but MCA got cancer and he started getting sicker and sicker. And so they put out one album. They called it Part 2. They said it was the same tracks that would have been on Part 1, whatever the story is there. But they put out this one last album in 2011, also inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then MCA passes away in 2012, and the band kind of dissolves from there. So Ad Rock and Mike D are still kind of involved in music, but the Beastie Boys are not making any more music. So 8 albums, 20 million plus records sold, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, a hell of a run, and really kind of interesting when I look back on this, that I kind of saw it from beginning to end.
No, I think, yeah, it's incredible. And they were so influential, right? Outside of even their own success. Like I remember, I think Apple TV had like a little mini documentary on them around the time, like I think they were filming around the time that he passed away, and kind of the remembrance of what they've done. And obviously they interviewed a ton of other musicians, and it's incredible, right? Like I think that's the magic of music that we've talked about throughout these 4 years of the show, is everyone kind of builds on everyone, so you're like a kid listening to the Beastie Boys, and then like you hear something you like, and then now that's going to get you into music, and then you go and become like a huge band that has your own influence, and you shape the next generation. So I think it's incredible.
Yeah, it was interesting as I went through this and put this mix together, and it was much more like heavily, weighted on those early albums. But, throughout, I almost equated them to someone like Prince, in that they always kind of just did what they wanted to do. And there wasn't sort of this desire to go, we got to create another, right? We got to get on the charts, or we got to appeal to this audience or that audience. It was just, we're going to make the music that we want. And you saw Prince kind of do that throughout his career, and some of it like hit, some of it maybe didn't, but you almost think they didn't really care what they wanted to. So yeah, right. I think that was, exactly. Just a really just a unique group. So yeah, really worth going through all 8 albums and seeing kind of the evolution there. Well, there you have it. Another super awesome mix for your collection. Tell us what we missed as far as Beastie Boy tracks go. You can hit us up on Instagram at Super Awesome Mix, but Samara and I will get to work on more new mixes. So for Samara, this is Matt, and we'll see you next time. Super Awesome Mix is brought to you by DLM. Make shopping easy with DLM, the one-stop shop for all your casual clothing needs. Shop DLMsupplyco.com and enter the promo code AWESOME at checkout to save 15% off your first purchase. That's dlmsupplyco.com.